Time to learn about Dead Space 2. From the comments under our Dead Space 1 reaction, it seems that Dead Space 2 is actually pretty good. I can't say that the reception for Dead Space 3 though is on the same level. I guess we'll talk about it when we get there. But as per usual, before we get into the reaction, please make sure to go support the OG video. Link to that is at the very top of the description, as always. That was a cheeky jump scare. Also, where are we? Would they really have such a set on a space station? But then again, we did leave the Ishimura, I think the other space station was called. But I don't think it's a far-fetched guess to assume that we're still in space somewhere.
Halloween is almost upon us now, so it's a perfect time to look at Dead Space 2. There have been a few, recent developments with this game, so I'll cover those too a bit. Dead Space 2 was a change of direction for the series, and it started with the marketing. If you saw my Dead Space 1 video, you'll know that I was kind of entranced by the trailer. It was slow and quiet, but then there'd be distorted violence. It has a clear intention of building up intrigue, so let's compare that to the Dead Space 2 trailer.
Oh my god! Oh gosh! I think it'll make a person become insane.
What is this from?
Game is an atrocity.
Oh my god, are those actual reactions? Was this back during the time where people were like, oh, video games are causing violence and all that? Well, I guess to be perfectly honest with you, that still sort of happens today. But I do recall back then that it was sort of mainline media news stories just happening here and there. Video games being blamed for a lot of acts of violence, when I think the real answer is that there are some people who are just kind of crazy.
It's revolting. It's violent. It's everything you love in a game. And your mom's gonna hate it.
My mom? What?
Why would they even make something?
Wait. Are you telling me that this was the actual advertisement? I thought Mandalore edited in some funny reactions in order to, like, lead up to the advertisement. What the heck? What was the marketing team doing on this one? Although, I guess Dead Space 2 was also pretty successful, so the commercial worked? Maybe?
Something like this.
Dead Space 2.
Your mom hates this.com?
So they're marketing
What
it
the
to kids?
Oh my god.
Okay, I think you get the idea. In contrast to the first game, which was sold as a horror title, 2 is being sold as an action game. I've seen the progression of Dead Space games compared to Alien, and I think that's somewhat right. I'll touch more on that later, because I'm going to start off with the premise. After a
Wait. Compared to Alien, Alien 1 was really good. The second Alien did switch over to action more so than horror. And that was also pretty good. Everything after that, though, oh god. Although, if you guys haven't seen Alien Romulus, I think it was, like the newest Alien one, that one was actually pretty darn good. As for the Prometheus line of movies, I'm still pretty mixed on that.
Escaping the quadriplegic fiesta that was the Ishimura, Isaac's been picked up by the government. He's feeling guilty about the death of his girlfriend Nicole. As the intro shows, he was the one who encouraged her to go on the ship in the first place. You're then awoken by a brand new character. Well, he's brand new to most people. He's the main character of Dead Space Ignition, which was an interactive comic made before Dead Space 2 came out. So we have protagonists from 2 games here. That's kind of interesting. I wonder how they'll get along with each other.
Never mind. What the hell? Where did we wake up in?
Oh my god, is he okay? There's a new necromorph outbreak. You have to escape it while still being strapped up in a straitjacket. You're on—
Wait, really? What the heck? How did they get here? I'm assuming that if we had woken up, then we would have been in a safe place, but did somebody bring a marker here? Why?
You're on a space station known as the Sprawl. It's been built into the remains of Saturn's moon Titan. And unlike the first game, which was the aftermath of an outbreak, You're seeing it happen live this time. Your goals are pretty simple. Get off the station, and find out what happened. If you haven't played the first game, the intro does a lot to recap you. There's also a handy video in the main menu that'll bring you up to speed. That's a good way to start a sequel. They could have had your rescuer not know what's going on and tag along a little. Isaac, what's a necromorph? Isaac, what's a marker? Where'd you come from, Isaac? They knew not to do that. While it's obviously better to have played the first game, it's totally viable to go into this as a new player.
I wonder if necromorphs are something that the government is attempting to keep hush-hush. I would assume that's the likely scenario with things like this. Like, oh no, the zombie outbreak happened. Don't worry, guys. Nothing is going to go wrong. We've got this under control for sure. And now look what happened. 28 years later. If you guys haven't seen them before and you enjoy zombie movies, I would recommend 28 Days Later as well as 28 Weeks Later. I think 28 Years Later recently got like a trailer or something.
That might sound minor, but a lot of sequels can suffer with extremes. Like on one end it'll treat you like you just played the last game minutes ago and it's all fresh in your head, but on the other end they think you're brand new and don't know anything. It can be a bit annoying at times, but overall it's a great balance.
Isaac, it's Dana. You have to dismember the creatures to stop them.
I know. I've had a lot of practice.
So new or returning, you'll probably be comfortable. With that out of the way, there have been a lot of changes since Dead Space 1. So let's start with the visuals. On a technical level, just about everything is a step up. The lighting, effects, and textures have never looked better. It's mostly free of the technical issues Dead Space 1 had, but the in-game VSync can mess with your aiming a little bit, so you might as well just force it outside the game. It's clear a lot of effort went into improving the visuals, and there are only so many ways I can say that it just looks better, so not having a lot to say is a good thing here. On the other hand, the art style has gone through some significant changes. This is a high-tech space station. We're not on some dying industrial ship anymore, so most of the game has a much sleeker look to it. The engineering suit is probably the best example of this. In the first game, it's like this bulky space welder outfit. It looked clunky and heavy, but it
Actually, though.
The Iron Man movies were making a ton of money during this game's development, so they may have taken some inspiration. It just feels like something.
There you go. Just factors of the time of development playing a major role in the game's direction. I will say though, at first glance, I kinda prefer the art style for the first game. To be fair, this probably also has to do with the fact that I prefer just more straight up horror games as opposed to action horror games. But yeah, that's more so a matter of preference.
Something changed between the games.
A little bit janky this area was, yeah.
I know some people who hate this design, but it makes sense for what they were doing. High-tech space station, high-tech suits. It's also worth remembering that Isaac moved a lot clunkier in Dead Space 1. Like when he's leaning around, he just kind of drifts from side to side. But in 2, he can lean all over the place like he's a boxer. I think his suit got streamlined down so the new maneuverability and better controls would make sense. Even when you find a dinosaur of a suit later on, it's all like material, not plated. There's one major aspect that makes the suit in 1 look better. When I said just about everything was better technically, that meant there was an exception. The way light and reflections work on the suit in 1 seems to be better than 2. I have a suspicion that it was toned down for the environments. Dead Space 1 had a lot of hallways, and the larger environments are usually more barren. Dead Space 2 typically has a lot more going on. It's easy to forget that this is also a 360 and PS3 title. They had limited resources to work with. Electronic Arts also didn't want one version looking too much better than the others. So when it comes to the art style argument—
Gotcha. What did they say exactly? We aren't trying to create disparity in the experience that our gamers enjoy. We want to make sure everyone's having that same experience. I think this was also the case for the third Thief game. If I remember correctly, that was also on the Xbox. And because of the hardware limitations, they couldn't create as vast of a level as they used to do for the previous Thief games. So yeah, makes sense. Develop it according to what you have.
Electronic Arts also didn't want one version looking too much better than the others. So when it comes to the art style argument in the series, I think that's a part of it. It is a subtle difference, but I think it contributes to people not liking Isaac's sleek art style more than they would. It might seem silly to focus on, but there's a constant debate over this. At the very least, I'm glad they were doing something different. If you're really itching to be a lumbering factory worker, they give you that option later on. The new stuff is unique from each other, and I think that's a plus. Isaac was an engineer in the first game. That's not his day job anymore. He's an exterminator now. Seeking out bulky work suits doesn't make sense to him in a practical sense, and it holds back his character development. If he has access to space police or military equipment, why wouldn't he use that? It's a way of showing escalation in the conflict. I've got to move on. I've spent 2 minutes talking about how lights look on spacesuits. The environments are just—
Hey, that's kind of what game reviewers do, right? So far though, it does seem like what the producer wanted was achieved here. But given the current situation, yeah, there really is no reason to go back to the janky engineer suit that was kind of just hurriedly put together because of an unknown threat that we had no way of knowing. And now that we're armed with that knowledge, bring the heavy guns, bring in the high-tech military-grade equipment. Everything that you can to kill these necromorphs. Actually, now that I think about it, I didn't ask this in the first review. Is it possible to destroy a marker? If you destroy the marker, what would happen? Would its influence stop working on all the people around here and turning them into necromorphs? Or would something contained within it, some sort of pulsing energy or whatever, just get like released into the atmosphere or something like that and cause catastrophic destruction. I don't know how markers work yet, and we're gonna have to dive into the lore once we finish the series.
Just a flat-out win. I liked how the Ishimura looked utilitarian and practical, but there are so many areas in Dead Space 2 that just blow it out of the park. It's not all sleek future either. There are lots of industrial areas. The station has a purpose. My favorite area by far is the Church of Unitology. It's brilliant.
Oh, God.
It has a very clean, modern entrance. This is clearly to lure new converts in. The deeper you go, the more red flags there are. It was easy to forget that this was all in a space station. It's one of my favorite areas in a game, period. It's a medieval cathedral, and a tomb, and a cult indoctrination center, and it's all in space. It's a visual feast. And like everything else in
the visuals here really do remind me of Thief, though. Just the much darker lighting, plus the religious context behind it.
Dead Space 1 and 2, it's been thought out. Here's where they perform funeral rites. There's the mechanism they use to collect and preserve all the bodies. Zero gravity means less effort to move them around, so it operates off that. Just don't look at the power bill. Here's where bodies get stored. It's an adventure. Otherworldly, yet familiar. There's tons to see. The game is always mixing it up. No backtracking like the first game. You're always heading somewhere new, and that's a great feeling of progression. Oh cool, a sail on a Dagoth air mask. Looking at the action side of the gameplay, the first thing I'll notice
where's that mask from? I'm assuming Skyrim? Or maybe Oblivion.
Compared to Dead Space 1 is that the aiming has changed. It uses a targeting reticle instead of laser pointers. I don't like it. Luckily you can switch back to classic aiming and there you go, you got your lasers back. There are a few on-rails sections where you have to aim and this seems to offset it a little bit, but it wasn't big enough to be a problem. Speaking of those, there are a lot more set-piece sections compared to Dead Space 1. The developers wanted to have more of these in Dead Space 1, but they just didn't have the budget for it. Keep in mind, their goal was to have an ultra-polished version of Resident Evil 4. Some of them do have some quick-time events that feel pretty unnecessary, but they're fun, and they keep it fresh. All of the weapons from the first game are...
We've had those sections in Dead Space 1. It was always all about the spectacle, especially that last boss fight too. And I mean, if it works for another game, then why change it, right?
Are back with some visual makeovers. A few weapons got their alternate fire modes reworked to be more useful. For example, my beloved pulse rifle now has a grenade launcher instead of whatever that was. So all the old weapons are back and they feel more useful than ever. 2 also introduces 4 new weapons. A rivet gun, a mine-laying detonator weapon, an electric javelin gun, and a sniper rifle. The new weapons feel very specialized. You can still beat this game using the plasma cutter. Using only one of these would be much harder. That being said, with the exception of the rivet gun, I found them all fun and complementary to the other weapons. The combat is smooth, responsive.
I'll use that scream in every video, right? I personally see this as a must when it comes to action combat games like this. Having multiple different options to choose from given the current situation. There's just something about it that feels so satisfying.
Responsive and satisfying. The process of getting geared up has also undergone some changes. You still need to hunt around for schematics and power nodes. This time around though, the power node treasure rooms are much more important. A few have new suits and weapons, so they feel even more mandatory to explore than before. You still have to find a workbench when you want to upgrade your stuff. Getting more health is a much bigger investment.
And it's a good thing to have a reason for your player to explore around the map, actually providing useful and tangible things as opposed to just a bigger number go up.
You need to find or buy a dozen to get it to max. On the other hand, investing into weapons is a lot more rewarding. Along with more upgrades, some have special attack bonuses. Kinesis damage is a new upgrade and a welcome one at that. The act of finding the bench is easier now. The objective marker can now cycle through different objects of interest. I think the most significant change to the upgrade and loot system comes from combat. When an enemy dies, they won't drop stuff until their body has been broken apart. Unless you test Kinesis, this makes it easier for them to play dead.
Oh, come on.
The new stomp is great. My one issue...
You know what, Isaac? I feel you. I've been cursing up a storm too.
Is that there are some big fights. At some point, bodies will start to despawn, and sometimes they drop ammo, and sometimes they don't. The safest way to prevent this is to immediately start smashing their body up as soon as you kill them. I'm okay with this, but it could be tedious for some people. Speaking of tedious, the store has an issue, and it's...
That actually reminds me of, like, using a chainsaw in Doom in order to get ammo or armor. And I think it was the finishers that would give you health. For those of you who have played Dead Space 2, however, let me know what you guys thought of this particular mechanic. In a way, I can see it being kind of satisfying, but it can get pretty boring as the game drags on.
It's not the layout, because that's much better. Let's take a look at the first store in the game.
Welcome to Microstore, CEC engineer Isaac Clarke. Updating inventory to see.
Did I win the lottery? A while back there was a lot of console-exclusive suit and weapon DLC, but then someone data mined it. Then EA flipped out and said, okay, everyone on PC gets it for free, and they just unlocked all of it. This is on a fresh save, it ruins all the progression. So I had to buy all the free stuff off the store and then shove it in the inventory. If you don't do that, it all clutters up the store for the entire game. But it's slow. You can only move 3 weapons at a time. Moving all the suits means sitting through a fashion show for each one, and I'm not going to do that. If the suit costs money, it's one you're supposed to have. Just do that. Let's talk about the enemies. Old enemies look better and have some new abilities.
That's actually kind of funny. Oh no, they data mined all the content. Just give it to them. Was that the usual practice back in the day?
There's nearly a dozen new monster types to fight, and I mean brand new, not reskins. There's a lot of room to experiment, and it's fun finding out what works best on which enemy. Some are mainly found in or exclusive to Zero Gravity. It's been completely reworked so you have freedom of movement instead of leapfrogging around. These are all welcome changes. To spice things up even more, they offer a new difficulty level right from the beginning. It can be a real challenge at times. There are a few parts that I'll probably never forget. I bet this elevator screwed up a lot of speedruns. Lower levels have more ammo, so if you just want a monster shooting gallery, that's viable too. There's something for everybody. And as far as over-the-shoulder shooters go, this might be one of the best, if not the best. So the action's great. What about the horror elements?
Offline. Station resuscitate. Manual operation only.
It shares some of the issues with the first game, like making the payoff to a tense moment be way too over the top. Let's look at the first scene in the game.
Did you have contact with this marker? It made you see things, didn't it? Things you didn't want to see.
It spoke to me.
What did it say, Isaac? What did it say to you, Isaac? Isaac, can you hear me? Isaac?
When I played this on release, I got shivers watching her crawl up on that desk. It's a really creepy image. Then her face started glowing and I was more confused than anything. They played it too hard. I might catch some flack for this, but...
It's hard for me to say, because I didn't really feel a whole lot watching that. More than likely because by this point I'm sort of desensitized. But yeah, I guess there is such a thing as going too far and too over the top, where it goes from being horrific to being kind of funny. I'm sure this is something a lot of directors for horror movies or games like this have to consider, because this threshold is definitely going to be different for everybody. Do they have any means to try and determine whether it's effective or not? Probably through player testing and stuff like that. Or is that even a thing that they consider? Do they just think, oh, this is the scary thing, so people should probably be scared by this? And then they just kind of wrap it up in a bow and send it off. Also, a lot of you guys informed me that while Mandalore was trolling at the end of the video last time, the chapters do spell out Nicole is dead. And apparently it's the marker that is using Nicole's image. I did ask, like, why Isaac wasn't experiencing any of the effects of the marker. And apparently the entire game you kind of are. And it's through the form of Nicole here. So what I'm assuming is happening here is it's just residual, or there might be another marker here, which is probably what is causing all the necromorphs to act up all again.
I think Dead Space 2 is a much scarier game. It had its moments, but it relied on the same stuff too often. The atmosphere was creepier at all times, but the delivery was weaker. I generally felt a little tense throughout the whole game. This is hard to put into words, so I made this MS Paint graph. This is based off my first Dead Space 1 playthrough. It's generally tenser throughout the whole game, but the scenery doesn't change much. It does deliver from time to time. Here's my Dead Space 2 chart. There are a lot of action set pieces and fights, so it's a lot less tense overall. But when it wants to ramp it up, it ramps it up. I know this is all subjective, but I'll tell you why I think this way. When you got to the tram in Dead Space 1, that was it. Chapter complete, next level. The tram was a safe place. You don't get loading screens like that in 2. I mean, elevators were hidden loading screens, but those aren't safe either now. You can get jumped on anywhere, at any time. This is a subtle effect, but you'll start noticing it more when the game gets quiet. Enemies don't only burst at events. It might even be different on a second play. The use of more open space is also something that unnerves me. I did a lot of camping back in grade school, and I had some unpleasant encounters with animals at night, so this gets me a little paranoid. It's been a few years since I played this, so when I replayed one chapter, I was sweating in my chair. There's so little light at times that your helmet lights it up. You're hearing weird noises and voices, and things are falling over. I was sucked right into all of it. I was more nervous in this one chapter than all of Dead Space 1 in total. It's a fantastic section.
Nice.
You have Event Horizon like nightmare visions throughout the game, and Nicole will torment you as well, but these didn't really get to me. A big problem is that it's hard to actually understand what she's saying at times.
Okay. It's good to know that while we have increased the action side of things and the spectacle side of things, we haven't forgotten that this is, at its core, a horror game. I do feel like most horror games, or well, most good horror games at least, do somewhat follow this pattern, where you're experiencing extreme moments of tension, but there's also going to be those moments of reprieve. Of course, the downtime can't be too lax, but if you have like this high amount of tension for the entire playthrough, I think that's mostly just going to exhaust the viewer, the player. This is probably different for everybody, but I feel as if they kept the tension up way too high, then you might reach a point where you've kind of just stopped caring about it. Or maybe you get desensitized to it, or you're just like, yep, I'm gonna close the game now. There's probably a unique response depending on the person.
Last Isaac saw of her was a video message, so they thought it would make sense to put a static filter over her voice. That's a good idea, but they went too heavy on it. My voice level was the highest of all the sound effects. She doesn't just talk during the quiet moments either.
Yeah, I have no idea what you're saying.
I can't reminisce right now. Back to the good, there's one enemy type that genuinely unnerves me.
Oh, look behind you. The frick?
Oh my god. That is so awful.
Where is it coming from? Oh!
God, the way they peek out at you. They're always moving as a team to disorient you too.
Oh, shit.
It's a distraction, I don't want to look at him. Oh man, even looking at that in post bothered me. What a cool enemy. Looking around...
That is really cool. This kind of makes me think of like the raptors in Jurassic Park or something like that. Honestly, it might have been the inspiration for these enemies too.
You'll know when you're in their part of town. They're unnerving, fast, and they'll kill you quick, and they make for a great challenge. Ugh. The last thing to talk about is the story, and without getting to spoilers, it's pretty good. Making Isaac a voice protagonist was the right direction to go in. What makes him great as a character is that he's scared, but he's doing everything anyways. That's true bravery, kids.
We can both get out of here. Just cut me out of this straitjacket.
No one's getting out of here alive.
Don't do it.
You're a strange man, Isaac.
Will you help me?
We're about to suffocate, so I think I'm better.
Okay, that's good.
Okay.
Power. Without it, we have no air and no train. Sprawl's gotta have backup batteries somewhere.
In both dialogue and gameplay, Isaac is more of a systems engineer than he was in the first. He jury-rigs stuff to help him with his goals. He comes up with the plans that require technical knowledge. Morons are calling him for help all the time. Cute girls laugh when he tells them about his job.
You?
Engineer.
Nerd. Figures.
Very good character.
Dang, dude. I mean, she do be kind of cute, though. I think for a game like this, it makes sense, though, to have him be voiced and to really expand upon his character, which was something I was hoping they were going to do at the end of the Dead Space 1 review, because I want to know more about this guy. He seems interesting, but he didn't really have a whole lot to do in the first game. Well, except kill necromorphs, of course. And I appreciate that the character isn't some steely badass who's like gone through the war and seen some shit, even though he's probably seen more horrific things than anybody should ever see in their life. But bro is scared, and we get that, we understand that, we can empathize with that. It's a lot easier to understand than the stoic badass is. Although, of course, from here we can build upon that. Like, in the next game, maybe he's much more experienced, he isn't shaken as badly by these things. And I mean, I don't think it's really possible to make an intriguing character who doesn't have a few flaws in them. Bro's meant to be an engineer, and I think his voice and a lot of his actions fit with that background.
Character traits. Very good. Unfortunately, the story feels a bit less complete than Dead Space 1. 1 answered a lot of the questions the story brought up, but left a few things open-ended. So you felt satisfied, but still had some mysteries to ponder over. Dead Space 2 raises a lot more questions, but answers very few of them. If you don't want spoilers, go to here.
We are here for the spoilers.
You're still here? Man, that guy who doesn't want spoilers is in for such a rude awakening in Dead Space 3. I forgot Awakening was the name of that DLC when I said that. Let's move on.
What?
It turns out survivors of marker incidents get afflicted with some kind of dementia. Another survivor, Nolan Strauss, has been hit with it a little harder. Most of what he says sounds like nonsense, but there's a bit of method to his madness.
Strauss, what are you doing?
You have to face her for me!
That's a risky move, Isaac. The director of the station really wants you dead. He's kind of a bland villain, and you need to hunt around for text or audio logs to really understand his motivations and what's his deal. It could be worse. It turns out marker madness doesn't affect people the same. It fills their head with marks and symbols no matter what, but if you're a smart boy, you can interpret the symbols as blueprints for a marker. That's almost a direct quote.
Dementia and codes and blueprints are all caused by the same signal from the mind. It's the people that are different. Smart people see codes and blueprints, but to everyone else, it's just noise.
Are you smart enough to build a marker? So tapping...
So wait, are you saying that Smart Boy Isaac isn't a necromorph because he's smart? His brain is big?
Into Isaac's brain, they built a theater bucket popcorn-sized marker. It's been established the government knows how dangerous these things are, so why would they do that? They put that answer into a readable log you can miss. The marker puts out a ton of energy. This is a world where people are tearing apart planets to survive, so that makes sense. I don't think it's ready for consumer versions yet. Along the way,
Okay. It's outputting a whole lot of energy. We're running out of resources. We need to use this, even though it is extremely dangerous and turns people into necromorphs. This sounds oddly familiar. Man, I found this cool and rad energy. Cool, where does it come from? From hell. Yeah, we can totally use that. Nothing's gonna go wrong. It is scary though, with how limited resources can be. And I guess it just goes to show that most of mankind is concerned about this issue. Or else, why would it be the main plot point for so many of these sci-fi stories?
Isaac linked up with a survivor named Ellie. She babysits Strauss while Isaac is away, until he puts her eye out because he's convinced it'll help stop the marker. He's always muttering something about steps. Ghost Nicole stops tormenting you and then says something about steps as well. Where are they going with this? The Nicole plotline is weak because we don't really know anything about Nicole. She was Isaac's girlfriend, so it makes sense for him to be invested. But as a player, it's hard to get into. It's hard to feel something for a character in a relationship you know nothing about. The first marker was reverse engineered to contain necromorphs. I guess they did such a good job that even the hallucinations are going along with that program. She guides Isaac into returning the marker.
One shred, one light, one bright shining star you claim to in this universe.
What are you saying?
They didn't do those touch-ups on this marker. She leads you into unleashing the necromorphs in the government center, and as it turns out, the steps do go somewhere.
What are they doing?
They're all coming to the marker.
It's all those bodies you let in here. It's triggering a convergence event. But we never expected this many bodies.
Uh-oh.
What it was made to do. Isaac, you have to make us whole.
What the hell is going on?
You have to make us whole again? Oh man, I've seen so many of those comments under the first video. Okay, what is this about? Is this some sort of collective consciousness thing? Well, I mean, I think the necromorphs kind of are that, and they're all being controlled by the marker. But is their whole goal to also have humanity, the entirety of humanity, join that as well? Something similar to like the little worm noodle things in System Shock?
Step 2. The screws go tight.
And then the eyes.
Cross my heart and hope to die. Stick a needle in my eye.
Oh god, I gotta be careful. I know the machine unlocked or extracted some kind of marker information block from his brain, but to this day I don't know exactly what happened. I suspect now that his brain had the blueprints for something, but wouldn't the marker get that anyway by absorbing him? Either way, the marker needs it to happen, but this also helps Isaac stop it. Nicole then gives...
Okay. Some sort of like schematics from his brain because he's a smart boy. And that's why Crazy Dude from before took out the girl's eye. It was foreshadowing for us doing this. And I'm sure there's probably a gruesome death scene if you miss by a little bit.
Isaac a Jimmy Neutron brain blast and he fights her inside his head. This might sound silly, but the best line in the series is in here.
God damn it, I trusted you! Fuck you! And fuck your marker!
It's not a very good boss fight. Nicole just kind of lumbers around while a reskinned enemy chases after you. The hive mind was also a pretty simple shoot the big glowing things, but at least it was a spectacle. Everything built up to this giant monster and you knew what was going on. The fight in Dead Space 2 isn't literal and it's hard to tell exactly what's happening, but when you do beat it, the ending is worth it. It's a roller coaster that goes all over the place. There's a fun little callback to the first game and then it's over. Isaac developed as a character by letting go of Nicole.
Yeah. He half expects Nicole to jump out. But no, it's our girl over here. I guess you have a new GF?
Oh, good character stuff. At the end, I still had no idea what the marker was doing. This was clearly made with a sequel in mind. Unitologists think that convergence will unite mankind. Wonder what that means. It's a story carried by its moments, but the beats from Alien are really apparent. People on a planet find a weird alien thing. It does something dangerous. They bring it onto their ship, it starts killing people off. A working person needs to save the day. One of the crew members is a traitor sent to recover the thing. Traitor dies, hero defeats thing. Now let's do Dead Space 2 and Aliens. This time the story is more action-focused. The hero is recovered by authorities and probed about the incident. They're plagued by nightmares and visions from it. The scale of destruction is increased. The hero is given more responsibilities and takes more action to grow as a character. Ripley was absent for the death of her daughter, Isaac was absent for the death of Nicole. Ripley protects a surrogate daughter, Isaac protects a surrogate girlfriend. Both end with the complete destruction of the
surrogate
threat.
girlfriend? Is that even a term we could use? I mean, regardless of that, you can see the easy comparisons being made here.
This time the hero saved others and completed their arc. Both have a disappointing sequel.
Oh,
I could compare all day, but ultimately this formula works. But what happens after you beat the game? You unlock new suits for New Game Plus, and you unlock Hardcore mode. It's harder than Zealot, and you can only save 3 times. So what happens when you beat Hardcore mode? You unlock the Foam Finger. Real space, real terror, real foam.
Worth. Bang.
Something like this is rare to see these days. Usually it's sold for $2.99, because everything's gone wrong. There used to be a multiplayer mode that was like Left 4 Dead Versus, but it's pretty dead now. Is that kid arguing with his dad? Well, it's somewhat alive and everyone has their mic open. That's a very trusting community. It's a very dedicated role-playing community too, because judged on their connections, I think their computers are actually set up somewhere near Saturn. I'd stick with the single player. Dead Space 2 was wildly successful. It doubled the sales of Dead Space 1, selling around 4 million copies near launch. Unfortunately, that wasn't successful enough. As you may know, Visceral Games is now shut down. Some developers have been shedding light on the situation. Budget including marketing was roughly around 120 million. Developers have tiptoed around saying if it was profitable or not. If you think about the cost of distribution, tax, cuts going to online platforms, and other factors like that, it might not have made a profit. The cost of authentic artisan moms is no laughing matter. This failure to meet expectations would lead to some big changes in Dead Space 3. I'll be talking about that very soon, but not the
Oh god. Okay, I have a really bad feeling about this one. We already talked about one of the DLCs. Is there gonna be a lot more of that? And there's likely gonna be a massive shift in direction because EA probably thought, oh, well this didn't work. Time to do something completely different. It sucks to see, but there's just so many good game studios, so many amazing people working on these projects that just get shut down. But I guess it's just good business.
The next video. I'm upgrading some computer parts to make video editing less of a hassle, so I'm gonna have a bit of an intermission video between things. I'm pushing Halloween into November, and no one can stop me. Stay tuned for the next video. I'll be discussing the dangers of Polish forests. Thanks for watching, and happy Halloween.
My body's blocking it, but special thanks to Visceral Games. They did good work, it wasn't their fault. Yeah. Looking Glass Studio too. As well as the studio behind Hi-Fi Rush. I think they were Tango Games. Just make a really, really good game and get screwed over for no reason. Or, well, in the case of Visceral and Looking Glass Studio, their games didn't sell as well as they probably thought they would, despite being really, really good. Honestly, I wasn't too sure how I felt about the second game, but as time went on and we learned more details about it and saw the whole picture, I think this is a pretty significant upgrade to the first one. The big change to Isaac's character and having him develop over the course of the game, I think is something we can universally agree was a great decision. I get really invested in video games with characters that I like and care about. So while I'm experiencing the game through this review, I can only imagine how it would feel like if I was playing the game sometime near release and I cared a lot about the first game. I learned more about Isaac in this one, and now I feel the same fear and shock and whatever he's going through in the game. I think this would be an incredible experience. But yeah, dudes, next time we'll check out Dead Space 3, and hopefully it provides us with some good laughs, I guess. But yeah, that's gonna be it from me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next one.